to clearly follow the proceedings of the public body in real time. Second, the new law authorizes all members of the public body to continue participating in meetings remotely. The open meeting law's requirement that a quorum of the body and the chair be physically present at the meeting location remains suspended. For this meeting, the planning board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast or is being broadcast by HCAM through multiple channels. Please note this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. And before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking and to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name and address before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every agenda item will feature public comment. For items with public comment, I will call on folks before they speak, and when I call upon you, please make sure to start with your name and address, and you will be afforded a maximum of 3 minutes. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So, members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative that you are here. Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson here.
Jane?
Jane Moran, present.
Dave?
Dave Paul here.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, present.
Fran?
Brandy, I'm present.
And Shahadul, it is his birthday today, and he will not be joining us, and Gary Trendle is here. So happy birthday, Shahadul. I'm sure that you're watching this planning board meeting with your family while you enjoy a very nice dinner. Or you'll be watching the recording so that you can catch up. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Gelsich?
John Gelsich, present.
Miss Pemberton?
Stephanie Pemberton, present.
And Mr. Paradis?
Phil Paradis and Beta, present.
All right. Well, let me just quickly go through the agenda this evening and note that we also have a planning board meeting tomorrow night held in conjunction with the select board to select our 9th member. So just a reminder to all the planning board members that that call is at 6:45 and there's a separate agenda for it. But we have a handful of A&Rs for tonight. We have some restricted land covenants over at Legacy Farms. From that point, we will go to the Turkey Ridge Estates hearing, and then we'll wrap up with our planning board subcommittee reports and the minutes review from August 23rd. So let's go ahead and start with the A&Rs. So do we have Mr. Mahal or a representative for him on the call? I don't see him. Which he does not need to be present to do this. John, do you want to just quickly explain this A&R for 9 Wilson Street and 11 Wilson Street?
Yes, I'm just going to open it up so everyone can see it. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
All right, I don't know how much more I can zoom in.
We can't read much of the text.
Yeah, it's not super important, but I'll try and go through it. So this was one parcel. This dotted line is a lot line that is getting erased. This was the other parcel. So what they're proposing to do is get rid of this lot line to combine the two lots and then create this lot with frontage on Wilson Street. So they would have essentially two conforming lots, one with this one and then one with this large area.
And they had two conforming lots beforehand as well, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so just making one bigger and one smaller.
Correct.
Okay. And I know that you had one issue with this, John. Do you want to just highlight that?
It says Wilson Road in the title block. It should be Wilson Street. I've got it right on the road, on the title block. So what we can do is on the Mylar, I can just cross off this road and write street. And then if that's what the board wants, we can do that.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board on this A&R?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Do we know why they're doing this? Do they plan on selling the other lot or?
We don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Is everyone comfortable with John handwriting the correction? I know that he has reached out on several instances to the applicant. They haven't responded, but I guess I should say this. Is anybody uncomfortable with John handwriting on it so that it is corrected before we actually sign it? I see thumbs up. All right. If there aren't any other questions or comments, I will entertain a motion to endorse the A&R for 9 and 11 Wilson Street.
So moved, Sundar Sivaram.
Mary Larson Marlowe, second.
All right, motion and a second. Assuming no further discussion, we'll take a vote. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaram, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
And Gary Trendle is a yes as well. Motion carries. The next A&R is for lots 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 Fitch Ave. Is Mr. Greenwald or an applicant for Mr. Greenwald on the call?
Rob Truax here from GLM Engineering Consultants, representing the applicant.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Hey, good. How you doing?
Good. Do you want to just quickly explain to us the purpose and need for your A&R?
Yep, I will. So this Fitch Ave is not built at the time. It's a private way. Technically, it's a subdivision that was approved 20, 30 years ago. There's been litigation that went on with Mr. Greenwald and the owners with the town of Hopkinton. And as part of the settlement agreement, my understanding is we're going to create this Lot E, which is up along the town of Hopkinton property. Up that area up in there is surrounded by the town of Hopkinton property. The school is on one side, the athletic fields are on the other. And the idea was Lot E would be conveyed to the town of Hopkinton with a 20-foot access way out to Fitch Ave. So we're rearranging all the lots on that side of the road from Lot 6 up to Lot 10. Yeah, that's the little strip that would go out. They wanted a minimum of 20 feet out to Fitch Ave. I'm assuming it would be for a walking trail to get from this side of, Blueberry Lane, Fitch Ave, et cetera, up to the school and the athletic fields. So that's the main purpose of the plan, to create that Lot E in the back there in the corner.
Okay.
And then we're
so
just
people know,
rearranging. Yep, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Rob.
We just rearranged the frontages along Fitch Ave as well for those 5 lots technically.
And am I reading this correctly that the dotted lines are the old lot lines?
Correct.
Okay. All right, Mr. Gelsich, any comments from your office?
No, we've gotten a question from a planning board member asking if this is allowed. I think as Mr. Truax said, it is a road that's laid out in a subdivision, so that's why it can go through the A&R process. Even though the road is not constructed yet, it is a way in existence, essentially. It's been an approved subdivision plan. The subdivision has been substantially constructed. So this would generally warrant endorsement.
All right, thanks, John. Questions or comments from the board?
For you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Dave.
So I have two questions. The first one's really quick, addressed to John. So is there an open ending that the approval never expires? I think you've told us once before, but I forget the answer to how long an approval lasts for.
Yeah, so essentially the trigger is if it's substantially completed. That's obviously up for debate what substantially completed is, but usually when the roads or a road is built and some houses are built. So this development has been essentially completed, the other part, right? The Blueberry Lane part. And now they're trying to go to the Fitch Ave part and build that, which was also part of the approval, but a different section of the subdivision. So I would say probably more than 50% of the subdivision up to this point has already been completed and has been completed for years. And now they're just building the additional part. They had to make some changes due to wetland issues, but I think they're moving forward with it now, as far as I can tell. So the expiration really only happens if no construction has been done. So since construction has been done, it's been essentially built, even if it hasn't been fully built.
And so just to clarify, John, because it's essentially built in there, does that imply that there is no expiration of?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't aware that it was part of the Blueberry, so I was just thinking it was standing on its own. So thank you for answering that. My second question is to the applicant. Do they anticipate building the road in the future, near future?
Yes, they anticipate starting. It could be as early as the next couple of months.
Great, thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Chair,
Yes, Fran.
so question for the applicant. As I look at the diagram here, just from a visual perspective, on the right-hand side where it's deeded to the town, that's where the Little League fields are. I'm just trying to get a visual, lockdown.
I believe
And then on
it's,
the left side. that's
yes,
kind
I
of where
believe
the-
it's the Little League fields.
Yeah.
Yeah,
On the
I
left
don't know
side
if
there.
it's soccer or is it baseball or soccer
Lit-
but it is athletic fields over there.
Little League field.
That would
And
be the area that says Parks and Recreation, Town of Hopkinton, on the abutting piece.
trying to get like I said, to lock that down. And then that walkway then will go into either the backside of the Little League field or there's also a skate park back in there. Do you know where
Yeah.
approximately that walking path will open up to as it kind of exits into the town property?
I do not. I'm not that familiar with where the fields layout out there.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Dave.
Yeah,
First,
there you
I'd
go.
just like to make a statement to the planning board that I think because this has been sitting for 30 years, we should take this opportunity to ask as many questions as we can and hopefully about this development, just to refresh ourselves and be aware of it. Hopefully the applicant is receptive to that. And along those lines, how many homes will be built? And will they all be built on Fitch Road? Street.
No,
Or
there's this. No, it's Fitch Road, loops around to. I'm drawing a blank on the other road, but if you could scroll over on this map you showed, or scroll out a little, you'll see how it comes across. So yes, it's going to
Okay,
come
so we don't
down,
need to know the
intersect,
name of
and
the
then go
streets.
back out.
That's fine. So is
That
it?
one's Adams Street.
Okay, and is there other street being built as well? Through you, Mr. Chair?
This one over here. This one's Myrtle. So just to bring the board up to speed, the applicant is not going to build Adams Street. That's the one that's right there. So as John had pointed out, the planner, there has been some wetlands that have been developed within that area. So we did file a notice of intent for some of the work on the roads. And during that process, we are going to concede the construction of that road and the lots, there's like 3 lots that front on it. So we're not going to build those. We're going to concede those to open space within the subdivision. And actually some others that are on Myrtle Street. So there's been some concessions made of not building some areas as we went through conservation. There's been some offsite improvements that are going to take place down on Blueberry Lane as well for some of the neighbors that have had some drainage issues from those wetlands. But we went through several meetings with the Conservation Commission, and they spoke. They were very concerned about, the neighborhood and what was being built and what wasn't. So that Adam Street will not get built. There's about 4 lots within that area that will not get built.
And
But you will be,
Um,
sorry,
Sorry.
just to follow up.
yeah, go ahead, Dave. Hang on one sec, Fran.
So just so I understand correctly, so what is it? A Fitch Street will be connected to Myrtle Street and come back out at the Blueberry Lane. And I'm sorry if I missed it, but did you say the number of houses?
He didn't. I'd have to go back and count. I think it's 17 to 20.
Okay, that's
I
close.
don't know
Thank
the
you.
exact number.
That's fine. Rough estimate's fine. Thank you.
Fran.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I will tell you, as Fitch is built and there's that walkway to the backside of the Little League fields, I can rest assured that there's going to be a lot of people that will park along Fitch and cut through, especially when the EMC parking lot gets built. Right now, the overflow on that has to go over to the high school, and people hate doing that. They park all over the place. Once people recognize there's an opportunity to park, they're going to start parking up and down Fitch. So it's just something for the developer, Mr. Truax, to be cognizant of. I don't know I don't know if there was any remedy, but just knowing
You
that.
could post it, no parking event, if over time, if it does become a problem.
Yeah, you got to cut through there, right? So people are just going to look at it and say, hey, it's an easy way for me to kind of like walk in the backside of the Little League field.
Yeah, I never gave that a thought, to be honest. I didn't think of it.
Just trying to be helpful.
No, it's possible. I get what you're saying. If there's a tournament going on and the place is full, people are always looking for another place to get in there. Yeah.
Fran, if anyone you would know. Fran is a former president of Hopkinton Little League, so
Oh, there you go.
I'm sure he's dealt with some of those issues in the past.
Trying to foresee what potentially could happen. You never know. But thank you for the update.
Other questions or comments before I get to mine?
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Jane.
What's been done in the past is when this problem occurs, often the residents will appeal to the select board to have residential parking only, or residential and guests only, or no athletic parking, or something similar to that for Fitch Lane, if that actually does become a problem.
Okay, thanks, Jane. Other questions, comments? So I just have, go ahead, Jane.
I just think on the whole, first look here, I think it's an exciting opportunity to open this up formally with a formal path to the ball fields for the Blueberry Lane and others on the Ash Street area. I know quite often, I think that they would much prefer to walk to the park with their children. And in fact, it might have the opposite effect of coming down and cutting down on some of the need for parking at the EMC park, if they can have a beautified walkway to access the park in a more convenient and family-friendly way.
Thanks, Jane. I tend to agree with you on many fronts there. That's actually a benefit. I think the parking issue is real. But I guess my only question I have is that the original lot lines did have an access way, or maybe it was a road of some kind that is on there. And I'm just wondering, I mean, in the previous version, there was already that curved, you can see that between lot 8A and 7A. So I guess I'm struggling a little bit if the impetus for this change is to create a different pathway. That it looks like that there was a right of way that already existed there. So can you just explain what the difference is between what was there previously and what's there now, besides the, visually the fact that it's narrower and that some of the property,
try.
your point, is going to be conveyed to Hopkinton?
Yeah, I don't think that strip going out was an actual right of way. I think it was just a parcel as part of land within between the lots. It was never laid out as a road on the subdivision plans that I saw. It was just there left for like someone wanted to have a future extension, which the applicant or the owners would still own. It wasn't getting deeded to anyone. I don't know all the particulars, but I know there was a lot of negotiation through the litigation that went on over, it's been like 20 years back and forth with the town. And I just know in the end, during the settlement, they agreed that they would create this 20-foot strip in that lot E to square the property off back there. That's my understanding of it. I don't know any further than that. I wasn't involved in any of the litigation, any of the back and forth between all the attorneys.
Yeah.
Through the chair.
One sec, Jane, hang on. So, John, I'm assuming that town council was heavily involved in this as well then. Is that correct?
I am unfamiliar with the litigation that happened, so I cannot speak to the involvement of town council. I would assume if there is litigation in front of a court, then town council was involved, but I cannot speak to what the process was.
Okay. Jane, go ahead.
Yeah, follow up on your question or statement, Gary. My understanding is that was an old cart trail that was pretty much worn out and often impassable, and oftentimes several times of the year. So it did pre-exist, and I think they're using the one that they're actually going to improve. And I think it would be a great improvement.
Okay, thanks, Jane. And I will say this feels like a weird one, because to us it feels like there's call it 17 to 20 new houses being put in here on an A&R, and I want to reinforce the point that this was previously approved, albeit at a slightly more impactful impactful design. And I think that I know there's been a lot of conversation, I think, with town hall and the applicants as to how this is being managed. And my sense is, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the approach here with the A&Rs is deemed to be the right approach by our land use department as well. So I mean, to me, my only ask for the applicant is I think the comment about parking is real. I grew up on a street that connected like this to the backside of some athletic fields, and there was a lot. I mean, our entire street was filled most of Saturday and Sunday, and so while I realize that may not be in the jurisdiction of this A&R, I'd really encourage the developer to think about how they might manage that parking in some capacity, either with a slightly wider street or something like that, because I think that's just going to minimize the negativity associated with it from the new homeowners. So, Fran.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think another thing is, I mean, this is not an insignificant number of lots going in, and I understand that this is part of a broader construct that occurred many years ago. I don't know if the number of lots has changed demonstrably from what it was originally proposed. I can't recall. But one of the things that maybe from a proactive perspective, and maybe the applicant's doing this, is letting the people on Blueberry know of what is happening and what the master plan is. Now, maybe they're all aware of it, but I think, given the breadth of what is being proposed here over the course of, Mr. Truex mentioned maybe starting as soon as a couple months, maybe it could be next spring, who knows. This is going to be a fairly decent size change for those residents on Blueberry, as well as to some degree, some of the traffic coming out of, and just the residential traffic coming out of this, extended development from Blueberry. So just something to, consider. Again, probably
Sure.
not germane to this discussion, but I think there are a number of additional steps that the applicant can do to kind of, create a broader sense of communication if it's not already being done with existing members, and even socializing it for, the folks that manage the ball field and things like that.
Yeah, and Fran, to your point, I know that in previous iterations, when this concept was in front of the planning board and they were looking at making some modifications to it, those neighbors were very involved. And I'm thinking, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but with an A&R, the abutters, are they noticed? They're not.
No.
So that would probably explain why I don't see anybody from the public here tonight.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, I can give you a little history of what's taken place with the
Sure.
conservation and neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had neighborhood meetings with all the neighbors. We've met on the site. We've walked through everybody's yard that abuts this project to look at the wall, because they all have been complaining about concerns of runoff and stormwater from this site. So we've walked everyone's lot. We've walked behind all the houses. We've met them all out there. We've had meetings. They've been to all the conservation meetings, and there's been several. And I will tell you that the chairman and the Conservation Commission were very concerned about the neighbors and about their issues. And we are doing some off-site improvements on the rear of their lots for like interceptor drains and some swales and things like that we've agreed through the Conservation Commission. So, I mean, you'd be more than welcome to go look at what we went through for conservation and what was done for them, for these neighbors. So they've all been informed. Everybody out there has come to the meetings. We've met them on the site. We've had site walks with them a couple times. I had a group meeting out there. I had to have, 30 people there at least. So we've sent them notices. There's a couple people we're working on their property. We've got some signed agreements to give them liability for liability purpose to go on their property and do some work for them. So there's been a lot of things that have taken place over the last year with the neighborhood, and unfortunately the conservation, not the planning board. So you guys weren't involved in that, but
Yeah.
the Conservation Commission took the initiative to know and say that because this was an approved subdivision and it wasn't coming back for reapproval, that they took the initiative to say, we have some jurisdiction here. We're going to make sure that everybody gets their piece of the pie. So the wetlands on the site were not, how do I say it? They were only protectable under the local bylaw. They were isolated wetlands, so they weren't protected under the state statute. So the only filing we did was under the local bylaw. And so they took that opportunity to review everything on the site.
Okay, so they've reviewed through the Concom process all of the lots that you're proposing to build on?
Yeah, and they went back and looked at the drainage study. So they looked at everything. The detention ponds that are built, we're actually going to go, the town has accepted the drainage basins that are already built for this project, but we're going to go clean them up and bring them more into compliance with today's standards for an MS4 permit. They haven't been maintained at all by the town. So we've agreed that we're going to go in there, we're going to clean them, we're going to shape them, we're going to clean them up, get the trees out, get the things working properly.
Who's going to maintain them moving forward?
The town owns them. The town needs to maintain them moving forward. They're already yours. They're in easements on the property, on the owner's property. When they accepted Blueberry, they took the basins with it.
Okay.
So we've been in touch with the DPW. They've been involved in the process. He knows we're going in and work on them. The conservation's reached out to them as well.
All right. Any further questions?
That's just an overview. I know you're all concerned because it is an A&R, so I
Through
just
the
trying to give you as
chair.
much info as I can.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
So just to give an overview of timing here, Blueberry Lane was built in the early 90s, around 91, 92, 93, so 30 years ago. So the approvals happened before that. That was before EMC Park was built. That's why that road was there to that parcel of land, or what looks like a right of way. From my point of view, I think it was there to connect to that piece of land where EMC Park now is. And maybe John can correct me if I'm wrong, but the subdivision control law came into, as it is now, came into existence in 1996 after this subdivision was built. It seems unusual to say a subdivision has been substantially built from 30 years ago and that it's still being built and that it could go through this A&R process. I just don't fundamentally agree with that. And I may not be, I don't see how that's appropriate without providing notice to abutters when they've lived there for 30 years. The time has passed, too much time has passed that it's still, from my point of view, that it's an active, approved subdivision. That's my take.
Yeah. You know, the only thing I'd say is that subdivision has been approved for the last 30 years. It's been, you know, a case in point, if you go to Google Maps, it's shown on Google Maps. It's always been there. So everybody that bought a home on there has always known that it's been approved and could be built. I agree, Rob. It's a messy one. I think that's why we're all struggling with this a little bit. But I see Mr. Paradis has his hand raised. Phil, do you have some
Yes, so
comments to add?
yeah, as we were asked by the Conservation Commission to review the project relative to the stormwater management regulations, and as Rob mentioned, the subdivision was built and was approved prior to the adoption of the stormwater standards. So we took a step back and we wanted to, as was indicated, this was 30 years ago, and obviously the much of the drainage system, especially the detention basins, haven't been touched in 30 years. So so we worked with Mr. Truax and his team to really update and modernize the stormwater management system to meet the current standards, as well as, and I can vouch for the amount of time he spent with the neighbors and Conservation Commission. So it's not a surprise to them. They understand that this is an approved subdivision. It is being seriously upgraded to meet the stormwater standards as they exist today. So just wanted to say that.
All right, thanks, Phil. So I think we're probably ready for a vote. And I mean, it seems like there's, I mean, I don't think there's an option to delay this or get more information because I'm not sure it's relevant. So I think at the end of the day, based on all the input we have from Town Hall, is that this is, what's the right term, endorsable. But any further comments before I entertain a motion to endorse this A&R? All right, so I'll entertain a motion to endorse the A&R for lots 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 on Fitch Ave.
Mary Larson Marlowe, so moved.
Dave Paul, second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and vote. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Abstain.
Jane,
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave,
Dave Paul, yes.
Deb? Sorry, not Deb. I'm reading off an old list. Sundar,
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Fran,
Randy Young, no.
and Gary Trendle is a yes. So that would be 5 votes for and 1 against. So the motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You
Good
too.
luck.
Good luck.
All right. Moving forward, we have some restricted land covenants, and I see Mr. McDowell is on the line.
Yes, good evening.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm well.
Do you want to? I know there's a bunch of them here. How quickly can you update us on what you're proposing?
Sure. So what this is, it's the restricted land covenants. As many of you know, Legacy Farms is going to provide over 500 acres of open space. These restrictions represent natural state restricted land, restored/landscaped restricted land, and then some agricultural restricted land. And the uses that are allowed and restricted in those various areas are broken down within the restricted land covenants. We've done these throughout the sites on every development parcel as well. This is really kind of all the area on the north side that is not being developed within the development pod. And within those development pods, there is restricted land also, but this is all the 199.5 acres outside of those development pods. Some of this was previously restricted, like the north parcel and various other areas, but when we worked with our engineer, we thought it would best to show the whole north side on one plan, similar to what we did on the south side. So you can see how all of the land is broken down on one clear, visual, and make sure there's nothing missing from the restricted land, no gaps. And that's really kind of the gist of it.
John, are you able to pull up the map? And while he's pulling that up, I think we need to vote on each of these separately. But are there any questions from the board on the 3 different requests? And sorry, just as I asked that, now that it's pulled up, do you want to just, Todd, can you just tell us really quickly again as we look at this as to what specifically?
Absolutely. The kind of darker striped area, kind of near the top left, is the agricultural restriction. And Weston Nurseries will use this area, have the ability to grow some of their PJMs and various other material that they will continue to grow on site in those locations. The lightest color area is kind of the dots that you see along the roadways mostly, and a couple other areas is restored and landscaped area. Mostly that's area that's being mowed or maintained, or it could be part of a stormwater area that's being annually maintained as well. And then the striped area is the largest area, is the natural state restricted land. And this really just encompasses trails and areas for people to enjoy and walk through, but there's no active recreation. There's no, land, there's no agricultural, and it's not being mowed every week. It's, only the areas being maintained would be the trail areas for residents and all residents to use.
Okay, thanks, Todd.
And the white areas, are the kind of development pods where all the homes are being built. And within those areas is additional restricted land, but those are done separately.
All right, thanks, Todd. Questions or comments from the board? Jane?
How does this change? How does this change the use for the town?
It's consistent with everything that's been done before, and it shouldn't change anything.
So Legacy Farms is still going to own the property. We're just, what are we doing with the language then? We're just
So,
updating it?
Yeah, the ownership isn't changing. It's just the restriction is basically being where it's in place in a lot of this area already, but there are certain areas that it hasn't been placed yet. So we're just making sure everywhere is fully covered, and so there's no missing parcels that aren't being restricted. We just want to make sure we got them all restricted.
So you're filling in the gaps that may have been there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other further questions? Fran?
Through the chair, Todd, welcome. It seems like the torch has been passed.
Well, Roy's on vacation, so he couldn't make it tonight.
Okay.
Well-deserved vacation.
My question, again, through the chair, going forward, the group responsible to kind of manage and maintain this, is that going to be the homeowners association?
So it's actually the landowners association. So there's two associations. There are various homeowners associations that are within both the north and south side. And then there's an all-encompassing landowners association. That's all the homeowners associations for both the north and south side that is run. And that's also, we have a third party, the Dartmouth companies, that manages that along with us and the homeowners associations right now. So that will continue to be managed by basically the whole project.
Okay, and so that's the responsible party that's talked about in the documentation, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, any other further questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Dave.
I don't know if it's appropriate for this meeting, but I just want to ask the question about, and perhaps Jane has some more information, but my question concerns the trails and the connectivity of the trails. And I'm not sure we took a really good look at this, and maybe the train has already left the station. So is it possible to discuss trails here, or is that kind of outside the four corners?
It's a good question, Dave. And I'm curious to hear Jane's response to it.
Sure.
And I don't want to get into a detailed discussion, because I think the trails discussion is probably reaches beyond acknowledging or recognizing the restricted land covenants associated with this. But Jane, do you have any broader comments with regards to trails and Legacy Farms?
Yes, we've been working with Roy McDowell and Ron for many, many years on this project. And what we ended up doing at the end of the day is going through the town parcel, which is bottom further where the new Marathon Museum is going to come, and then up through the area where all these stripes are. And Legacy Farms had originally planned to put a trail there, and it was in a different spot where we were going to go. And what we did was we joined efforts and joined it so that we'll be working together to build this trail out. So to answer your question, Dave, yeah, we came up with conceptual route years ago, and that doesn't change at all. That's already built into the cake.
Okay, thank you. Just a follow-up comment, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure. Go ahead.
So Jane, perhaps we can invite you to one of our Trails Committee's meeting. We can discuss that further. I just want to be aware, that's all.
Oh, sure. No,
Thanks.
no worries.
Okay. Any further questions before we take a couple of votes here? John, is it possible we can vote on all three of these at the same time?
So why not?
Okay. And what are we doing? We're accepting restricted land covenants? What are we
voting to, I guess the official vote would be voting to approve the restricted land covenants and to allow for the planning board chair to sign on behalf of the board.
I'd make a motion for that.
All right.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second as stated by our principal planner. Assuming no further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaram, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
And Gary Trendle is a yes. All right, let me just go back to my agenda here. So that puts us through those. All right, let's
Thank
go
you.
ahead and move on to Turkey
Thank you very
Ridge.
much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good luck.
And
Thank
before
you.
we do, we just need to take a vote to open the public hearing. So I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing for Turkey Ridge Estates.
Mary Larson Marlowe, so moved.
Sundar so seconded.
All right, we have a motion and a second. So we no further discussion, we'll vote. Mary?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaram, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
And Gary Trendle is a yes. So what I'd like to do here, I think this is was it our 5th meeting talking about this? It's been a lengthy process thus far. To be honest, just based on some of the emails I saw coming across this morning, I'm a little frustrated that the applicant and Beta haven't been able to work through more of the items outlined in Beta's report. And so what I'd like to do is we have an hour committed to this hearing. I don't think we're going to get through all of those items identified by Beta tonight. But you know, I think we'll spend an hour working through them as far as we can get. And I guess my ask is actually for the applicant, if there are particular components or items in that Beta review that they want to discuss as a board, then let's prioritize those first. So like I said, we've asked on multiple occasions that you work with Beta offline to help speed this process along. And like I said, it's a little frustrating that there isn't more progress, but we've got an hour on the agenda. So I'm just gonna keep track of time and we'll get as far as we can. So I don't know if
Process question, Mr. Chair.
yes, Dave.
An hour gets us to 9 o'clock. We usually meet at 10. Is there something planned for the second hour?
We still have the subcommittee updates and we still have a minutes review.
Got it. Thank you.
But, you know, again, part of this is just out of reality is that there should be more progress between the applicant and Beta on this. And so I think that at the end of the day, it's not our job to facilitate the nitty-gritty discussion that they can work out on their own. So I'm going to leave it to them to identify what topics they want to work through here. But it's going to be a hard stop at 8:50.
Great, thank you.
So I don't know. I don't see Mr. Markadon.
He's finishing up another meeting, Gary. He should be jumping shortly.
Okay.
But I can try to fill in.
Okay.
Do my best to answer any questions.
All right. Well, Shane, where do you want to start?
I don't know, Phil. I mean, do you want to start with anything specific?
Sure. Let me share my screen here. Can you see that? Oh, no, share. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yep.
So one of the concerns we have, well, there's a few concerns relative to the access road. So this access road will need to be open and accessible all times of the year for fire department and emergency vehicles to be able to cross through this area. So the road needs to be in a fairly well-designed and not susceptible to vehicles getting stuck. So so there's a few things that, one is just the entrance. You know, this is the road, this is the curb line, and it's shown off the pavement and in a really awkward situation. Concurrent with that is that you have a low point here right in front of a driveway. It's not an ideal situation. So my recommendation is that everything get pushed up like 20 feet, 25 feet, and you know, maybe the access road comes off right here. But it would allow the fire access to go straight. Right now, he has to hit the curb at a weird angle to get into this, you know, and under, you know, severe conditions, it may be difficult to do, and or he's going to hit the gate or something. So I really want this to be revised as well as, you know, this is a road and it should be, you know, a fixed radius in the design, as well as the profile should look continuous as well. Let me see if I can get to the profile. So, I mean, you know, in order for a vehicle to really be able to access these, you know, you don't want to get a vehicle stuck because the front wheels are down and the back wheels are down, but you got this sticking up. So there should be some vertical curves to smooth this out. And engineer it, as well as we should know what the slope is here. This may be a 10 or an excess of 10% slope, and depending on the material, may be difficult to maneuver under wet conditions, or, you know, so I think it really, this road needs to be engineered. Bottom line. So.
All right, Shane, what's the, where does this stand from your perspective? Because I think that Phil makes some pretty good points, and I think that if we were to apply a level of consistency, I look at how the connection has been designed and engineered over between Chamberlain and Wayland. It is designed and engineered as a road.
Yeah, when speaking with Joe today, you know, obviously this isn't a public road. It's not, in hopes it will never be used. I know he did all the SWEP analysis with the fire truck, and we've coordinated that with Chief Miller, you know, make sure that the fire trucks are able to, you know, go from one end to the other. We're really tight for space at the front of that lot to shift that road. We've already moved that once to try to get it so it wasn't shared with the driveway. So we were pretty limited there what we could do. But the roadway itself meets all the SWEP analysis for the fire trucks. And again, Joe didn't put, you know, treat this as a roadway, because it's not a public right of way. It's not to be used by anybody but a fire truck in the, you know, in the case of an emergency.
Chief Miller, I think I saw you on.
I'm here, Gary.
What's your perspective on this emergency access road, or I don't know if it's a road or not, because it doesn't appear to be designed as a road.
So I did ask for a SWEP path analysis, and they indicated that the area up towards the Lincoln Street, that kind of that little bend right there, the apparatus could make it through, But as I'm looking at this also, what's our final width going to be? That's definitely going to pose a problem, especially on that corner where it's such a jog versus a sweep. And second, Gary, you brought a very good point. We work very diligently with the Chamberlain Wayland project where we did get that road. And again, it's the same purpose. It's an access road, just as this is, to flow very nicely. So
Yeah,
my question
and
is,
I think just to reiterate that is, I mean, so to your point, Shane, I realize that this is not a road that's intended to regularly carry traffic, but it could be called upon to provide access for some pretty heavy and difficult to maneuver equipment that could be an emergency situation. So I mean, that's just my position on it. I think we've been pretty consistent there, but to Chief Miller's comment, what is the width of this
It's a
access road?
16 foot. 16 foot wide.
Okay.
and Shane, just refresh my memory because it was a while ago on our initial conversation. You said this road is going to be a hard pack road, correct? Phil's asking about the road and what it's going to be structured out of, and you had assured me that it would be enough to handle our apparatus during winter conditions. Because that, Phil, that was one of my concerns out of the gate as well too.
Yep. Yeah. Hard pack gravel.
And has there, I mean, what is there engineering behind it to support the load bearing requirements?
Yep. Joe has all that information. Again, I wish he was on the call. But yes, I know Joe has calculated all that. It's all an engineered, design to meet the weights, the requirements. We took all this into consideration with the design, with the fire department's trucks and the specific.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is a couple of potential issues here. Number one is the access and the kind of the drive lines on the westerly side. Two is the reasonably or potentially dramatic changes in slope as it goes up over the hill. And then third is the radii or lack thereof of the road itself. And I think just from my perspective, the radii is probably pretty easy because that's a simple swept analysis that would determine if the truck can get through there. The other two are a little bit more complicated. And so my guess is, maybe it's worth us talking about those a little bit more as a board. So at this point, let's just keep this focused. Just want to make sure that we're talking specifically about the emergency access road right now, and there's going to be other stuff we're going to get into, but are there questions or comments from the board on this access road?
Just a quick follow-up, Mr. Chair. Is the fire chief okay with a 16-foot wide road?
Yes, Dave, that's exactly what we did over at the Chamberlain Wayland connection as well too. We went with a 16-foot wide road.
Great, thank you.
And sorry, Chief, are you comfortable that that's not a radius turn there?
As I look at it here, it does pose a little bit of concern. Again, I want us to revisit that swept path analysis showing me if we could actually incorporate the swept path analysis into this. And again, Gary, I don't want to keep going back to the Chamberlain Wayland project, but we did that as well at the entrance of the Chamberlain Wayland project. We did the swept path with the ladder showing the arc of the turns for the ladder going in.
Yeah.
I would like to see that if we could.
Okay. And Chief, while we got you unmuted,
Yeah.
Also curious to hear perspective on the the westerly entrance to it, and then also the sort of the elevation profile if you have concerns there.
So I will be honest with you, I didn't realize the elevation profile until tonight. So yes, I do have some concerns. Again, we have to make sure that the bottom, what we call the beaver tail of the rear end of the truck is not going to bottom out going up one of these inclines. That's A. B is, again, winter conditions. What is the grades? Will we be able to maneuver up and or down without coming down and sliding or causing an accident or getting stuck going up? And third, Gary, the end off the Cedar Street extension, I'll use that. If, again, show me the swept path analysis with the ladder, show me the arcs and the curves on that corner there, that'll work. And if not, then as you guys stated, it's potentially look at something a little bit more less intrusive for coming in with that. Gotta remember, our ladder truck is 30, to say 37 feet to keep it simple, it's 39 and a half feet. So just say, say 40 feet is a good example. And it's tandem wheels. The picture I'm seeing here is a single axle on the picture. So whoever's moving the side, just hold on one second. Over in the right corner, you'll see the blue ladder. Single axle versus a tandem axle are totally different. Your turning radius does get a little bit tighter. So we need to make sure that we're getting that adequate turning radius with the tandem axle.
Okay. And
Chair.
the curb cuts matter to you, just as I'm, again, kind of looking at that entry point, not sure where the curb cuts would be to drive up through there.
Yeah, Gary, honestly, we don't want to drive on a curb or someone's lawn getting in. That's something we definitely don't want to do. And again, I don't want to go back to Chamberlain, but if you remember the entrance to Chamberlain, we had the same issue with that corner. We ended up taking the trees down and push that corner back so we can make that sweep as well. It is identical to what we're looking at right here.
Yeah. Okay.
To the chair.
So, yeah, go ahead, Jane.
I agree with Beta's comments, and I think all the questions that the chief is asking for would be answered completely, I think, in a full engineering design for a road, if this were designed better. I'm very concerned about those 10% grades, especially at the curve. I'd like to see where the grade starts, considering that juggernaut curve. If that's at the curve and they're expected to go up a 10% grade, that's quite a bit. And the same thing coming down, it would be, it doesn't look too healthy for them at first look right now after hearing Beta's comments.
Yeah. So I'm gonna recommend this. And if the board feels otherwise, then we can talk further. But just to sort of save ourselves a lot of discussion, which I think a lot of us may say similar things. I feel like this is one where the applicant needs to go back and rework this a little bit. I know I, for one, put a lot of weight on Beta and our fire department to ensure that this is going to serve its purpose. And I think that for me, I'm going to lean on them as to what their comfort level with what's being done here. So I think this is something that needs to be some time needs to be put into this to make sure that this is engineered correctly so that it can serve the function that it is intended to serve. That I can see a few nodding heads. Does that make sense? And if anybody feels otherwise, then feel free to speak up. But I think this is a pretty clear one that needs some more work before we see these plans again.
Through the chair, do we have like precisely some of the things we would want, like a swept analysis with a dual axle ladder truck, some type of assessment of the going up and down the grades, and third, maybe entering the road from the Wedgwood neighborhood side? I think maybe is I don't want to talk for Phil, but I think if we could give direction, maybe in this public forum, that would help the situation.
Yeah, Phil can probably speak to those design standards better than I can. I think a lot of it is a sweat analysis that's done on the radius and to make sure everything fits. And I think you can specify the type of truck they use to do that. The elevation profile. I for one couldn't tell you what the design standards are for a road, but my opinion, I think we need to treat this like a gravel road would be treated, and that's to ensure proper access if it's required.
To you, Mr. Chair, I know we kind of want to move on this one, but can we take a quick look at that elevation again? And can we tell what the difference in elevation is between the two cul-de-sacs? So they're roughly the same, it looks like, right? You just have to go up and down.
Yep.
And Phil, what's the height from the bottom to the top?
So this says 311 0.83 to 330.
So like 20 feet, if I'm understanding that?
Yep.
Yep,
19 feet.
almost, yep.
Thank you.
Through the chair, clarifying question.
Yes, Sundar.
I recall hearing that a SWEP analysis was done, but then now I'm hearing that it may not have been done or done with the wrong truck specifications, fire truck specifications. Could you please clarify that?
So the swept pass analysis, it was submitted. Again, if you look at the, you know, the truck has to hit the curb at an angle, which is not ideal. And then also he's like maxing out, and this 16-foot wide drive is something of a misnomer. Let me see if I can find the section. Oh, went the wrong way. So there's a gravel strip. Not quite sure what this is trying to show, but dense grade crushed stone and then a gravel strip. So the truck actually needs to have to go off the dense graded stone on one side and then come back on the other side. So that it has to take that based on the swept pass analysis, it has to use the entire 16-foot width. If they go over, you know, I don't know how bad that is, but.
Through the chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
And that is something that I was thinking about as well, Phil, that I'm just wondering, you know, for a gravel road, what is the usable width when, particularly in the winter, you know, so it's being plowed, you know, are they plowing every absolute inch of that 16 feet width and onto the, you know, basically the downward sloping shoulders, I assume, because that's what would be necessary for this particular use. And that's, you know, so if it's gravel, I don't think, my personal thing is, I don't think of a gravel road as you using every inch of it. I think of you using the center of it with a little bit on each side. So it's kind of 12 feet with what Phil just showed, 12 feet with plus a little extra for some tires to go a little bit over. And that's my concern. So particularly in the winter.
Just to follow up to Mary's point, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Sure, Dave.
She brought up a great point. Plowing on gravel seems to be a problem. Is that what we're doing on Chamberlain? Gravel as well?
No, it's paved.
There's plenty of gravel roads that are plowed. So, I mean, it's not necessarily plowed down to the pavement, but I mean, I don't think that's an issue. I don't remember what Chamberlain Wayland is. I know the bridge itself is paved.
Yeah, the entire road is paved.
But I wouldn't say snow removal is an issue on gravel.
Well, it might, through you, Mr. Chair, it might be multiple factors, you know, going up 20 feet on gravel, partially covered with snow, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of issues with this that I don't think are flushed out, and there's different ways to resolve it. I think there's a benefit. Personally, I think there's a benefit to a gravel road, but it's got to enable consistent access for an emergency vehicle if necessary. That's the intent of it, and you know, I think there's different ways that they could ensure that. So, and again, this is a case where I don't necessarily know if we want to try to design and solve this tonight, because I don't think it's I think that's something that's probably better served offline. And I think that to Rob's comment or question, I think there's existing design standards for things like that I think that the design should follow.
I agree. I agree, Mr. Chair, but I just wanted to point out that I thought this was a great discussion because we haven't really talked about this road before. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Through the chair, Joe Markedon has been waiting on the host to be let in for a few minutes. If we could get him in here.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Just let him in.
Thank you.
Mr. Markedon. Can you hear me?
Evening.
How are you? Thanks for joining us. We were just talking about the emergency access road and the design standards that it's built to, and some concerns about the entry, the elevation profile, the swept analysis, and the primary road width being 12 feet with 2 feet of overage on either side. So I don't know if we want to spend the time to completely repeat ourselves, but if I were to speak from the board, I'd say that we think that this emergency access road needs some more engineering and design work to make sure that it does a better job of accommodating the emergency access vehicles that it's intended to support.
I guess, is there a bullet point? Where is the concern about access? You can see the swept path analysis. We stay on the gravel roadway throughout.
Yeah, Phil, do you want to go ahead and repeat your area of concern? And
Okay.
also just for reference, which point is that in the beta letter, just so I can circle it and highlight it?
So this is G4.
G4, correct.
So the access from Road A requires that you hit the curb at an unideal access, and then you have to use the entire width, especially at the corner here, to maneuver the vehicle through. So what I'd like to see is this access road be pushed out so you can get into this road more in a direct line and not at such an angle to the curb. Right now it requires running over the and following the curb, the sidewalk. So the second is that the access, this should be a rounded curve to provide better access. Right now it requires maximizing the width of and if you're off by a little bit, you could, your truck may be in trouble. The third thing is that the profile is just not well designed. You got a steep incline here, and then it's your turning point. This should be fitted with curves to allow the vehicle to transition over the change in grade safely. And also we would expect to see what is this grade.
10%.
Yeah, that's pretty steep for and then to go from 10% to 0 and then down 10%. That's not a well-designed road.
And I guess, Mr. Chairman, I guess we all appreciate that this access road is only for emergency vehicles, that fire and police will make their way to utilize this when convenient. We don't anticipate frequent traffic. In fact, we anticipate no traffic. But I understand concern about access through that road, but the only folks using that are fire and police in an emergency situation.
Yep, I understand. So I'm not concerned with sight lines. I'm not concerned with two-way traffic, but I do put a lot of weight on the perspective of our emergency personnel, and I want to make sure that the emergency apparatus can get through that emergency access road if need be. And based on the previous discussion that I heard, neither our neither Beta nor our fire chief are comfortable with the emergency access road as it has been proposed. And again, that's just speaking for myself here. That's my perspective, but it's also based on the conversation we've had.
Sure, hard for me to catch up without having heard the chief's comments, but we can certainly examine this.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Joe, I mean, this goes back to some of my earlier comments too, that I think this is our fifth meeting on this, and the fact that we don't have any sort of alignment or consensus between the applicant and Beta is a little frustrating for us. It just doesn't seem like we made a whole lot of progress on the initial review letter, and coming in at this point in the hearing, we would expect that the majority of these issues would be closed out, and we would be moving on to other parts of the review process.
Through you, Mr. Chair, are there other major issues, or is it just pretty much the access road?
Yeah, there are still a number of other unresolved issues. This is just the first one that we're talking about.
Thank you.
So, Joe, my ask was to take this back and working with Beta and with Chief Miller to modify this as appropriate so that they are comfortable with the design of the emergency access road. And again, acknowledging that this isn't meant to be a heavily trafficked road, but it needs to ensure that the fire department can get a vehicle through there if they need to. And again, I think that's consistent with how the planning board has reviewed other similar type subdivisions and emergency access roads.
Be happy to take a look at it.
Okay. So who wants to take us to the next point of discussion? And Joe, just so you know, my original intent was for you as representing the applicant to walk through the remaining points of contention, but just with you not being able to be on the line, Shane deferred to Phil. So I don't know if you want to keep having Phil work through these and speaking to his issues, or if there's specific items in the Beta letter that you want to put in front of the board to get some direction or have some discussion on.
I did not see many items based on this letter from the 15th. I see G4. Sounds as if you've picked that apart fairly thoroughly. We moved on to G3, 5, and 6 for the next outstanding issues. Revising the roadway cross-section, updating a detail on the driveways to lots 1, 3, and 5 was contained in D5, and D6 was a trail network.
Okay. So what's the status of those addressing those Beta comments?
So D3 looks like it's a request from Phil's group to fix the typical cross-section, which is a quick fix. Updating lots 1, 3, and 5 I'm not sure the thrust of that comment. To follow up with Phil and the trail plan. That's above my pay grade. That's a decision from Shane and Courtney.
Okay, so let's talk about D5. So it sounds like D3, you're going to address D5. Phil?
So these lots grade down from the road. We want to make sure that it's not going, the driveways themselves will not be recipients of the roadway drainage. So we typically put a little berm and or mound to prevent the roadway drainage from going down the driveway and causing issues with the residents. So
So in that last iteration, we introduced a 5% for a short distance in the driveways to create that little mound, that little interruption on the flow.
Yeah, again, an engineered plan would have a radius going back down. So you would have to see where that ends up. You didn't show it going down. It would not be a straight line and then an abrupt change in grade. There would have to be a vertical curve, just to make it passable.
On the drives 1, 3, and 5? I guess I don't follow your thrust, Phil.
Phil, are you able to show us on the drawings?
Yep, I can do that. So that's your typical section, Okay, here's the driveway section. So,
Yeah, sheet 16.
right. So the plan shows it dropping from the edge of pavement down. So now you're introducing this 5-foot area going up, but you're still showing the driveway up. It should be down. It should show, a thought through engineered plan, like a radius here it should show a radius. And show the intention of this section.
So the 3-inch lip is what we're trying to convey. And in that short distance, we'll make up a 3-inch lip to provide the mound that you spoke of, and then blend down to the grading shown on the plan. I guess I'm asking, are you looking for individual details of lots 1, 3, and 5?
Just show me whatever your typical slope is coming down from the driveway, and then show me how you're going to engineer that. What am I going to look at when I'm out in the field inspecting these?
The 3-inch rise at the location to keep stormwater flow within the travel way is shown in note 1.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I might add on.
Sure, Dave.
I think, Joe, what he's suggesting is this kind of looks like a flat driveway here. I think he wants to see like an average of those lots and a sharp, whatever it is, a rounded decline on the left. Does that make sense?
These are not terribly difficult details. These are typical details, so they should be provided.
Joe, can you provide that?
Certainly.
All right. How about D6? Open space trail plan. So it sounds like, Joe, it doesn't sound like you're in a position to respond to that. So Shane, are you able to respond to comment
I'm
D6?
actually going to take it, Gary. Hi.
Okay.
I'm going to take it. That's okay. So we've worked with HALT, and we have no intentions of creating new trails out there. All the trails that we've all seen on previous plans no longer exist. So when open space is donated, Halt will come in and work their magic. We don't have anything to do with it.
Okay. I know in a number of other plans that has been something that we've gone into the details on what that trail plan looks like. But before I go further, I see Mr. Dauchi has his hand raised. To your perspective, Courtney, we'll go ahead and hear from Mr. Dauchi, who I think is probably representing Halt.
Charles Dauchi, 25 Sanctuary Lane, member of the Halt Board of Directors. I would concur here that the trail network, so-called, that is shown on the plan really does not appear to have been a functioning through trail network, as has been in the case in some other subdivisions. It almost looks as if this was a network that was put in perhaps for previous perk tests, who knows? But in any case, if Halt or some other similar group were to take over management of the open space, I would expect that we would then look at it, create our own new trail work. So I think the showing an existing trail network really is not relevant in this particular situation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dauchi. And so it sounds like Halt is comfortable with what the applicant just stated, that that Halt would, when the time is right, would come in the open space available and design and build out that trail network as Halt sees fit.
Again, Halt is not committed to taking over management of the open space. That's still a question, but the a trail network really would not be developed until we or whatever other agency had a chance to thoroughly assess it and determine. I think a key thing is that public access through the site from both ends be provided and secured and maintained. In terms of other trails within the open space, there were access that we had noted, particularly coming from Lincoln, the access to both the north and the south sides of the open space coming in from Lincoln. There are topographic or retaining wall and fencing issues that I hope would be able to be addressed in the future.
Okay. Let's really quickly open it up to the board for comments or questions. I'm curious to see how people feel about the proposal from the applicant to not do any kind of trail plan and leave that for future consideration. Dave?
I was just thinking, as long as we, I haven't had a good look at it yet, but as long as we have the capability in the open space to connect the decent trail system, right? I mean, I think that's all we really need, right? Is the potential to put trails in.
To the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Jane.
I agree. Just having accessibility on either end is the important thing. The trails can be looked at after the build out because you really don't know what you have right now.
Okay.
It's just too early to even discuss it. But accessibility is important.
I think we're kind of echoing what Chuck has stated.
Yep.
And through
Okay.
the chair, it sounds like Chuck had indicated that there are some accessibility issues. So in terms of where those entries into the open space are proposed. So I think that we just need to ensure that there aren't, retaining walls in the way or whatever the case may be.
Can we take a quick look at those?
Yep. I think that's where Phil's going to.
And as Phil's pulling that up, Mr. Chairman, I think it's one of the things that we should ideally come to agreement on regarding public access being secured and maintained, as Mr. Dauchi mentioned. What transpires within that is up to whatever entity takes that over. But
thank you.
Securing that the public access, I think, is an important component that now would be the right time to do that.
Through the chair, clarifying question on that.
Sure, Sundar.
Mr. Dauchi said that HALT is not committed to, I think the term he used was taking over the land for trail purposes. Just out of curiosity, if the public access question is not resolved to everyone's satisfaction, where does that leave this? In the sense that if open space is still preserved, but due to various reasons, an entity doesn't commit to building trails out there, is that, for lack of a better term, a deal breaker?
May I, Mr. Chair?
Yes. Go ahead, Courtney.
Thank you. So I do want to just clarify that the way the plans are as right now that we're looking at, there is 100% public access on each way. So from the very beginning, when we began talking about this project, there is a connection from Cedar Street Extension through Lincoln, all the way on our road into Hopkins State Park. That was really important to HALT. That was important to, I believe, the planning board from the beginning. So that has not been changed or altered. There is public access. And to answer the other question, if this particular organization, I mean, we certainly are fond of HALT. We're hoping that we all can come to an agreement, and that's the group that takes over this space. So we're going to work as hard as we can to make that happen. If we cannot meet all of their requirements, we do have a plan B in process. So we have a backup plan if this land, it does not go to HALT.
Okay, thanks, Courtney. So just to clarify, on the Lincoln Street access, I understand that you certainly have access via the emergency access road. And I'm wondering, and I realize, Phil, you're probably looking for it right now, but is that the primary access point to the open space from Lincoln Street?
So is this, can you see, do I have this up or is it?
No, you've got it up. You've got it up, Phil.
Yeah. So I don't think there's any restriction going this way. I mean, obviously it's a steep slope, but that's the nature. And it doesn't look like there's a wall here and a wall here, but it looks like you can get through here in some sort of fashion. As was stated, you can get through, you can connect the two via the access road. It looks like you might be able to get to the, are these going to be accessible? This open space going to be accessible from the emergency access road?
I don't want to overspeak, but I believe it is, because the idea was all to be trails back there. So, and we included the access road as part, some people that can walk that if they need to, or if they want to.
Okay. So obviously, so that allows you to get access all along this edge. Up here, again, you're coming around from Lincoln. You can get through here. Let's see.
So it sounds like plenty of access points to the open space off of the roads and the emergency access road.
And there's a
super helpful
skinny.
to see it. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I think you're all set. If that's the measure you're looking for. So,
Mr. Dauchi?
Yes, if Mr. Chair, if John could go back to the cul-de-sac at the Lincoln end, that's the area where I think just there are some practical concerns.
There we go.
And yeah, show north a little further, please.
This way?
Yep, that's great. Thank you. The slope, just as you enter the property, as your engineer indicated, there is a relatively steep slope there. What would be helpful is if there were shown on the grading plan some mitigation to make that slope a little more walkable. Let's see, I see there's a post contour 312 on the road.
314 in.
Yeah, south of that to show grading that would provide a walkable grade, easily walkable grade up into the open space. That would be helpful. On the opposite side of the road.
Hold on, can we just be clear on that, what we're talking about?
I'm sorry, say again, please.
Can you walk Phil through where you're talking about and just put the pointer on it so we all understand what we're talking about north
Yeah,
of the
so
road?
this is
Yes,
312.
where the palm is showing, and then just come straight south from there.
Right, this is 314, yeah, 316.
Yeah,
I mean, he's graded it.
That's not a comfortable walking slope. It's certainly climbable, but if it could be evened off to more reflect the overall slope of the grade in this area, that would be helpful.
Okay, so you're talking south of the road. I thought you were talking north.
Yeah.
It looks like they tried to do that. They spread out the contours here, so
yeah,
it's pretty consistent all the way up. So.
Yeah. The almost more concern is the open space on the opposite side of the road, where there is shown a 6-foot high fence and a retaining wall. Some break in that in order to provide access to the open space to the north would also be useful.
Yeah, go ahead, Fran.
Yeah, didn't the applicant say that?
Oh, yeah, I didn't see the fence. Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't the applicant say that they were going to provide the open space to whatever entity, and then I think it would be up to the entity to make those changes? Or is Mr. Dauchi proposing that the applicant make those changes or call them upgrades to the open space? I'm just confused.
I mean, I think that so that was kind of what I was leaning towards, is that, you know, what we also don't want to do is we don't want to disturb the open space in order to regrade it. Right. And I think that kind of defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do here. So on the south side, there is a little bit of grading there, but that seems pretty reasonable. There's a lot of different ways to address it. I think to your point, Fran, I'm less concerned about the contours of the land and the open space, but the wall and the vinyl fencing, I think that's probably to help shield the neighbor that is in particular concerned about the headlights and whatnot.
That's correct.
You know, so I mean, I think they're trying to solve for a problem here, which I appreciate. I guess I'm wondering, for that component of the open space, are there other access points? Because it's going to feel a little funny to have there's not.
We could not real short.
Sorry, Chair.
Chuck.
Sorry, Shane.
Mr. Chair,
go ahead.
Not realistically, other than at the far, that narrow strip on the far west end, but it would seem that even a gate or an opening in that 6-foot fence just before the retaining wall might be a possibility.
Yep, that's not a problem.
Yep.
Okay.
So it sounds like they can work together to figure that out, Mr. Chair.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yep, very simple. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions about trail plans? It sounds like people are generally comfortable as long as there's access, and I think that we've, at least with that minor change, seems like we're comfortable with access to the open space.
Agreed.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got one minor change there, which the applicant can make, and I think that addresses D6. Joe or Shane or Phil, so just from a time check, we've got 7 minutes left on this topic. Of the remaining open issues, are there any in particular that you want to bring in front of the board?
Yeah, I'd like to offer a recommendation relative to the change for the so this current set of plans includes a new basin, infiltration basin, and it's primarily for the 60 feet of roadway at the very end of the project. And it requires, it's showing, a couple catch basins, manholes, a pipe system that goes all the way here, and ultimately disturbs this land to provide an infiltration basin for very little flow. My recommendation is that the applicant rethink this and maybe put a small rain garden or something that would be, maybe change the cross slope so that there's no sidewalk on this side, so we could just put a sluice and a little sediment basin and a rain garden right here in this area. I'm not sure what this P1 is for, but I think that would solve and be a lot less expensive and a lot less burden to the homeowners association to maintain and of this area here. So that's a recommendation I have for this. It would just be save everybody money and time and such. So
Phil, is that outlined anywhere in the letter?
So it's at the very end.
All right, SW 47.
Yep.
If that's not the case, if the applicant wants to, and that's their right to do that, we would at least need 2 test pits in this basin to confirm the soils and the groundwater. So, but I'll leave that up to the applicant.
I guess on this end, the issue, our concern was the slight increase in post-development rate and flow associated with that short piece of roadway. We were concerned that the board would have issues with that change. So we introduced the basin. If you feel that the basin is overkill, if you will, the basin is the negatives associated with installing that outweigh the positives.
Yeah, no, I think there's a better engineered solution. It's probably a lot less expensive, a lot less disruptive, and I'd be willing to work with Mark. I tried to reach him before we submitted this letter, but I wasn't able to get to him. So
correct. Yep.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think most of us would support that if that's what our town service is saying, right?
Yep. I think so.
Question to that, Mr. Chair, question.
Yes.
Through
Go ahead,
the
Brian.
chair to that end. Phil, does that create any issue, any additional concerns, runoff issues with the abutter there, the Hubley property? I mean, I think one of the things that, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, with the development, with the design that you had put together in the catch basin down below, that would kind of effectively kind of deal with any potential of runoff. I think with the changes and I guess it's just a general question back for Phil, with your proposed, with your proposal, you know, is there any additional risk or concern if I was the abutter?
You know, so it looks like it grades out to the street. If this is the concern, you're putting something here. That's what you mean? It would grade out to the street, but this area provides maybe 1.5 CFS in the 100-year storm. It's not a huge amount. It's not something we, you know, we would lose sleep over. Now, I understand what Joe is saying. They want to mitigate that, and that's all well and good, but I don't think it needs to be, you know, this huge effort to do that. I think if you, because this road goes up, if you extend the cross slope so that all the water in this section of the road is on this side, it's kind of something we did in Whisper Way. We put a little basin right here on the corner to handle this little bit amount. So it would be, you know, I mean, that's just a lot of infrastructure to you know,
all right,
to deal with it. Yeah.
And I guess, Phil, I think what Fran's getting at is just even, you know, not only from a stormwater perspective, potential impact, but even from a visual impact.
Right.
And it's hard for me to get a sense as to the impact of that feature that you're describing.
Right. I think it's an open space now. I mean, it looks like the tree line is somewhat back here. But if they could have, I mean, that's a lot less disruptive than, you know, a huge thing in the back. And, you know,
yeah,
I don't know where the neighbor is, but you know, it doesn't have to be big. I don't think it could be something that has a subsurface of stone that could make it even smaller. It could be fitted with a rain garden or landscape pretty well. It could even look like a little bowl that nobody would even know it's a basin. So I mean, there's you know, there's several options, but
I get it. I mean, the area that you're using with the cursor, is that part of the Hobie property, or is that part of the applicant's property? You keep circling around that P1 with the cursor down below. And
so I think this is also on that property, it's much bigger. It looks like the lot line is here. So whether it's here or there.
Mr. Margonaut, can you confirm is that retention basin on the Hubley property in the back there?
That basin 52 sits on an easement reserved from 2004, the P2 easement, the permanent 2 easement. That basin sits on an easement reserved for that purpose. The P1 is also an easement that was reserved should we need to install something at that location. Just trying to plan ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I get. And are the Hobleys aware of that? I assume that there's been communication and they're aware of both of those.
There were discussions many years ago. I have not spoken with them, excuse me, recently.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Courtney.
Since day one, you know, I think I told you guys we were really open with all the neighbors, and the Hubley property is represented by like almost like an estate. Like there's a lot of family members that participate, but one main person that kind of takes all of our calls and emails, and he's very aware. He's seen the plans. I don't want to speak for them and say they're uninterested, but as much as we reach out to them and try to keep them updated, they have never had concerns. They're made aware of the planning board meetings. They're made aware of every time we go out there and touch the property. So on our end, we don't know how much more involved we could get them. So they seem to be comfortable with what's happened. Again, I don't want to speak for them, but they have definitely been made aware on our part how this is going.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Courtney.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry, who was that?
Dave, sorry.
Dave. Go ahead, Dave.
Just a quick question about the upper part of the road there, or I assume it's upper. I don't know, maybe it's lower, the rest of the road. Where does that drain? Maybe perhaps Phil can tell us.
So the main drain is all is routed through here and ultimately through a detention basin, which is over here. So the majority of the road goes that way. So so it's just this little piece here. Now this could be a subsurface. This looks like a subsurface system could be put here too. So I mean, there are a lot of options. I just would prefer not to see, you know, whatever, engineer just to spend a lot of money for this little piece of road.
I mean, if I were to summarize, it seems like the alternative is less of an impact to the total easement area. It's lower cost. I agree with Fran's comment that it'd be great to just make sure that the abutter had some opportunity to weigh in, as you know, in reality, either one is being built on their property. But you know, so I don't think any of us want to speak on their behalf, but it seems like the less obtrusive one that's the lower cost is probably a benefit to all parties. Hypothesis, but you know,
through the chair, this also could be an example of the low impact development that I think John Gelsich has showed us in previous meetings, and I think establishing a rain garden is I think one of the examples that in fact he had called out. So seems very consistent with that approach as well.
Yep, thanks, Sundar. All right, any further thoughts on that that discussion? It sounds like as long as there's not a major objection from the abutter and recognizing that either one of these would be on their property, it sounds like there's probably some preference to use the less intrusive option.
When you get a chance, Mr. Chair, I do have a general comment not related to that.
Okay, well, we're over time, Dave.
Yeah, I just wanted to get this in before we broke, though.
Okay, go ahead, Dave.
Thank you for honoring that. Just to go back to the access road real quickly, I just wanted to make a request that if they, you know, it seems like there's a lot of discussion with that. So if we have an opportunity where the planning board, any of the members can be invited for a walkthrough, if they do have that, I would like to. If they end up walking that access road and discussing it. If that's something that the applicant could just make us aware of.
Okay, so what you're requesting is if there's any on-site discussion or walk or evaluation that you'd like to see if there's an opportunity for the planning board to participate.
Yes, correct. Even if there's some kind of resolution that, you know, and they're going to be out there looking at it, that would be great. Just so we can get our eyes around it instead of just kind of looking at a piece of paper.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. All right, so we're going to need to continue. Hopefully we got through some of the bigger points of consideration in the beta review. I guess my question to the applicant is, our next meeting is November 1st. My ask again is that as many of the outstanding issues that can be addressed offline be addressed offline. And I realize that there are always going to be some things that maybe there isn't agreement upon, and that's what we should be reviewing. But I guess my question is, do you feel like you would be ready to come back to us November 1st? Or do you need a little bit more time, at which point November 15th would be a better date?
I think November 1st. We're right there, so.
Okay. All right. And I'm okay with that. Like I said, this is we need you guys to work offline with beta. So if you're comfortable, you can do that by November 1st and actually have those materials, you know, wrapped up before the meeting, our meeting packets go out, then I'm fine with that. So on that note, I will entertain a motion to extend this hearing to November 1st and also extend the decision to John. What's the recommended date for the decision extension?
I would say maybe November 10th.
10th and 11th is a holiday, so November 10th. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to extend the hearing to November 1st and for the decision to November 10th.
Barry Larson Marlowe, so moved.
And Young second.
All right, I heard Fran with the second. Assuming no further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Moran, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaram, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
And Gary Trendle is a yes. So thanks to the applicant. Look forward to seeing the revised plans and the modifications of what you come to terms with on that emergency access road. And I'm personally hopeful we can get through the rest of this on the 1st. So
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
all right. The last two things we have, planning board subcommittee reports or updates. And I think actually that format with breaking out into the separate meeting rooms actually worked pretty well. But I believe Mary and Sundar have a presentation for us on the affordable housing. So they're setting the bar high. So how are things progressing, Mary?
Okay, so I'm trying to share my screen. I'm just figuring this out. I don't know why. Oh, there we go. Okay, now share my screen. That's not happening. Okay. Hang on. I've never done it for PowerPoint before and it's not showing up.
So John has to, and John looks like he's stepped away.
Oh, here we go.
Momentarily, but John needs to give you access.
I think I have access.
Okay.
Did you see it
Yep,
now?
we can see it now. Yep.
Okay, good. Now I've got to just switch it over to slideshow. And okay, here we go. Okay, so Sundar, I'm gonna give it to you on certain slides. This just is a summary. The Planning Board Subcommittee for Affordable Housing started with Muriel, Sundar, and myself. Obviously, Muriel left when she joined Select Board, and Shahidul has just joined us, but has not had a chance to attend any meetings. So that's the makeup of the team. We started off really trying to educate ourselves on what is the current status and addressing some issues like the payment in lieu of creating affordable homes and so on, and ended up really trying to define where we want to focus our efforts as a committee as well as a board, and we wanted your input on that. So, okay, so we're going to cover, and this is a quick overview of affordable housing, current state of public housing, and the Chapter 40B affordable housing in Hopkinton. Not intended to be a comprehensive explanation of all the affordable housing programs, but I just wanted to give you a flavor of that. And then we're going to talk about the affordable versus attainable and where we want to really focus, and some of the discussion we've had about potential approaches to this. Okay, so a lot of information on this slide. Affordable, low income, subsidized, kind of, interchangeable terms. There is 40B affordable housing in Massachusetts. That's Chapter 40B, that each town must keep at least 10% of their housing stock as affordable, or it will be subject to 40B developments. 40B developments being a way to bypass certain zoning bylaws and so on. There's a subsidized housing inventory, and that's the 10%, and that's calculated by the state, and the land use office keeps our inventory up to date. To qualify, you need to be less than or equal to 80% of median income for the area. Again, this is something calculated by our state, but it's not an average for the whole state. It's an average for the area. I think it's by county. So this program is not subsidized by the state or federal government. It is simply done by the towns providing that affordable housing, making sure it's done in developments, that sort of thing. So applicants apply through the state. There's a website for that. They qualify, and then they get put on a waiting list. They indicate their location preference, what communities they want to be in, whether or not they would like to buy or rent. And then there's a lottery. So the people on the waiting list are in a lottery. Now, this obviously can, take a long time to get one of these houses, but when that is available to them, then they can purchase the housing. And it should be at an affordable rate for them, but it's not done. And, they can use other mortgage assistance and things like that, down payment assistance, different programs. But the purchase itself is their funds. They're doing it, they're buying it, or they're renting it. So this is different than state-aided public housing in Massachusetts. That is owned and administered by a local housing authority. We have a Hopkinton Housing Authority. It's overseen by the state Department of Housing and I think Child Community Development, DHCD. I think that's right. I didn't have room to write all the acronyms out. This includes the elderly or disabled housing as well as family housing. So there's, that you can develop one or the other. The qualifications are similar in terms of less than or equal to 80% of area median income for family housing. This stuff is subsidized by the state. So it is, and it is owned by the town. We do have some of this housing in our town as well. There's also elderly or disabled housing. And that, obviously qualification greater than 60 years or older, and or a qualification of disabled. And there are other programs as well. I'm not going to go into detail on them, but if you hear those terms, there's rental payment vouchers from both state and federal programs. There's Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program, the Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program. That is, they provide funds for rental housing that are in otherwise market-based rental housing. So that is not part of the public housing. It is just a regular apartment, but it provides some vouchers or funding for them to pay their rent. There's federal housing programs overseen by HUD, and many of these other programs are also administered by the local housing authority, but they all have varying income qualifications. Okay, so if you're thoroughly confused, that's pretty much where we were at the beginning. So, okay. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. This is the status of public housing in Hopkinton. Sundar, if you want to go through this just explains.
Sure. Yeah, pretty self-explanatory. I think we have 98 units, dwelling units, which are called out as public housing. The majority of them, 92, are in the Brampton Circle, and that is where I think when we normally say that we actually meet the state guidelines, this number is actually representation of that. So we are, so 98 units is where we are. We have some, in other slides, we have some comparative numbers for neighborhood towns as well. So 92 in one Brampton Circle, and then 6 different units in smaller developments. A little bit of a update on what makes up the Hopkinton Housing Authority. So the Housing Authority, if you're not familiar, they have a very sophisticated website. You should go and I provided links in this deck to their 2020 and 2021 annual report. But very well-known personalities are managing the Housing Authority here. So we in some of our discussions in the past, as well as what we plan on having, we plan on inviting representatives from the Housing Authority. And I think Rebecca was in a couple of our sessions previously, if I'm not mistaken. And going forward, we plan on calling them as well to fill in some more details and actually get some input from the HHA.
Okay. So, and thank you, Sundar. This just to clarify again, this is the state-aided public housing. So this is owned by the town and administered by our Hopkinton Housing Authority. It is not the 40B developments. All right. So it's a different category of developments. Again, very confusing. So this, again, state-aided public housing, that's our inventory. And other neighboring towns. Milford has 353 units, Westboro 110 units, and Ashland 40. However, affordable housing, which is under the 40B, this is the status. So the goal of this law, which was passed about 50 years ago, was the goal to make at least 10% of every community's housing affordable. And it included all forms of housing. It doesn't have to be a single family home. These are the ones that are sold by the developer when new, or resales by people who own them, but they have deed restrictions on them. So they're not owned by the town, they're not owned by the state or the federal government. They are owned by the people who are living in there. They're created through the market. This is just, it's written as an incentive to build these. There are some apartments with designated affordable rental units also. I could not piece together exactly how it fits into 40B, and I'm not going to try to, reinvent the wheel. Currently, about 20% of towns in Massachusetts have achieved this 10% goal. It's primarily in large metro areas and suburbs. And although that doesn't sound like a lot, there are many towns that are close to the 10%, and it's driven primarily by need. Because in the large metro areas and suburbs, like we're a suburb of large metro area, that's where more affordable housing is needed, not in very rural areas. So, okay. Hopkinton has greater than 10% affordable housing. We have 9 single family homes and 41 condominiums that are designated affordable. The land use department monitors the stock. The Affordable Housing Trust Committee, separate from the Hopkinton Housing Authority, administers the Hopkinton Fund for Affordable Housing. Okay. It is paid in by developers that opt for payment in lieu of building the affordable unit. The funds are used for repairs on housing and potentially could be used in the future for purchase or repurchase. And the current balance in that fund is about $1 million. And that includes payments from Legacy Farms. I think there's still payments pending from certain other developments that are in the process of being built. So we do have a fair amount of money in there. The challenges to this particular area in terms of having developers build the homes in their developments or elsewhere in town is obviously our high cost of land and existing houses. Several developers that the planning board has asked to investigate this have found it extremely difficult to find older homes that are in a price range that make it even possible to rehab an older house or, land to build affordable units on. Subdivisions with less than 10 houses, of course, don't need to provide an affordable unit. And within a new subdivision, developers find it difficult to provide the affordable unit and still make the subdivision financially viable. We could argue that particular point extensively, but that's just the fact of what we're hearing from developers. Okay.
Mary, quick question about this slide, please.
Yep.
So you say 9 single-family homes and 41 condominiums. That's not number of units, right? Is there a lot of units in the condos?
I'm sorry, say again?
That's not a total of 50 units, right? Is that 41 condominium buildings?
No, I believe that's housing units. That's what was reported to us, and we have a printout of that we discussed and reviewed with the Affording Housing Trust Committee.
So we're saying because I would thought that the number would be a lot higher. Because you said we're saying we only have 500 housing units in Hopkins. Is that right? 50? Yeah, 500.
Yeah, I think that there's some apartments missing from this list, but I don't know for sure.
Okay.
But I do know that we got this list of single family homes and condominiums from them. And yeah, so
okay, I don't want to sidetrack the presentation. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. I understand.
John, just to clarify.
Go ahead.
So yeah, these appear to be the home ownership units. There are many other rental units that are not captured in there.
Yeah, I didn't have the numbers on the rental units. I knew they existed.
Got it.
At the end of this, I can pull up the SHI and show you guys what that looks like and how we account for the units. That would help.
John.
That clarifies it, John, not including the rentals. Thank you.
And Mary, one other quick question here. Remind me again, so the payment by developers in lieu of building affordable units, what is that typical payment?
It's around 250, 300,000, somewhere in there, John. That's my ballpark recollection.
It changes based on a number of factors, but I think the last payment that we just got from the trails, which was like a week and a half ago, was for about $275,000.
Okay, so I guess I'm a little surprised, given all the money we have going in from new developments, that the current balance is only about $1 million. But I guess that means that they are using some of those funds on repairs and whatnot. No,
they haven't used funds much recently.
Yeah, so we get the affordable housing payments at every 10th certificate of occupancy.
Yep.
So the trails, while they're going to have 17 payments, have only done, I want to say, 3 payments. Chamberlain Wayland has not made any payments. Legacy Farms provided units. They didn't make any payments. I don't know where the other payments have come from, but not from significant developments. So we will be getting more money from the trails. We just have only gotten, I think they've only gotten 3 or 4 payments done. So that's why.
Okay. Thanks, John. That's helpful.
Yeah. And so with the $275,000 number, you can understand why it's difficult to build a house to be sold for approximately that amount to be in the affordable category in the town of Hopkins. Okay, so I'm going to be switching gears here because this is where we are dividing between the concept of affordable, which, in just lay terminology, we always talk about affordable, we want everything to be affordable, but there's the true definition of affordable in terms of the laws and so on. That's what we've been talking about so far. And there's a significant additional need within, the whole country, but, talking about Hopkinton here, there's a need for attainable housing for, single family homes, condominiums, whatever the case may be, but home ownership that is not necessarily for the low income people where there's a lot of state and federal programs. And obviously not for those who can afford market rates in Hopkinton, but there's a middle category, middle income people who cannot afford to buy in Hopkinton. And that is what we as a committee would like to focus on. The reason we would like to focus on that, not because it's easier, because there's still significant challenges with this, but because we feel like the programs in place, I mean, they don't, I'm not saying that, you know, they meet all the needs of lower income, because there's certainly a lack of affordable in that category. But there's also the lack in the middle. And I do feel like we have an opportunity to address some of that through zoning and other possibilities. So, okay. So the concept is, you know, is really promoting diversity, economic diversity, and making Hopkinton a welcoming community for everyone, and not having it such that, you know, everyone is priced out of the market. This also addresses the ability for, you know, perhaps young families, pre-kids coming in and so on, and elderly who might not want to leave the community. So all of those things have been a concern, have been addressed to a certain extent in the past, you know, through other zoning initiatives. And that is, you know, that is the goal here. So our committee is recommending that the planning board focus on the missing middle. So attainable housing, zoning and programs. The options to increase attainable housing. And I'd like to point out that many of these in various combinations have also been recommended by the Growth Study Committee, have also been talked about by Planning Board in the past and by Zoning Advisory Committee in the past. So mixed use developments, perhaps in downtown only, perhaps other specific areas. And these can be used in combination as well. So multi-unit housing in again, limited areas or townwide. So some things we can address through changes of zoning are conversions of single family homes into multi-unit apartments or ownership, you know, like townhouses, condos. That is something that the Zoning Advisory Committee is discussing, you know, currently. It's on our agenda for this year. New construction, multi-unit or high density housing. This is certainly something that many of the areas of Legacy Farms did, is multi-unit and or townhouses more densely packed with open space around it. So we can look at how to make that work in other areas of town. We have a certain limitation in terms of we don't have a lot of wide open spaces anymore. And, you know, there's, you know, in many cases, there's not only just for subdivisions, but like for, you know, downtown area, for instance, we're mostly dealing with lots that are built out already. So we either have to address conversions of large homes, or we have to think about, you know, if a property is being torn down, what to encourage in those spots, in those lots. The third item is create local programs with higher income qualifications. So not the less than 80% of median, but 100%, 120% of median. So now this would be more administrative work. We would have to have, you know, we'd have to, you know, add burden to the town, either committee or possibly staff members having to to administer this kind of program, do a lottery similar to what is done by the state for current affordability. So, but that is a possibility, and it's been done by other towns. And so, that's certainly something to consider. And another idea is to solicit land donations or home donations for starter homes plus open space. This could work, the Hughes property, for instance, was donated to the town and we created a trail. These are kind of long-term initiatives, is really addressing, it may not come to fruition for 20 years, but it is something that we can, put the wheels in motion now, and it may come to fruition at a future point. Incentives can include buying down mortgages in exchange for deed restrictions. I'm sure there's lots of other ideas, but that's certainly one of them that had been suggested. So the challenges are public transit and / parking, so more public transit, we might need less parking, but also the placement of parking, particularly in the downtown area, not wanting to have a lot covered with asphalt, and the aesthetics of that on a small lot. Of course, public opinion, because we struggle with that with any zoning change of, I don't want this to change the character of my neighborhood. I don't want a lot of apartments and multi-units in my neighborhood, that sort of thing. If we, we're going to have to address that no matter what, but we need to think about how to work that into public opinion. Now, I didn't put this down here, but there's always the push and pull of creating housing and the issues of the school, the burden on the school system and the burden on public, other public funds. So, okay, so recent ATM in 2021 approved the accessory dwelling unit zoning changes. We made it potentially easier for people to have accessory dwelling units and use them for more than just a family member. So that is a very small step towards some of these things. And Zach is currently reviewing the conversions to multi-units. So the following pages have a glossary of terms. I'm not going to go through each one, but they're here. And also useful links. All right. So this is all about the affordable if you want to educate yourself more. There is another link, the missing middle housing, that I put on this page. That is, it talks about some of those, some other designs for multi-unit and high density housing. So, and we'd love your input.
So, Mary and Sundar, first and foremost, thank you for your preparation and for, I think it was a really nice overview of affordable housing. I think just from a timing perspective, I don't think it makes sense for us to open it up to a lot of discussion now because we've still got a few other updates to get through. But maybe what we can do is for folks that are interested on the topic or have specific questions, maybe they can just either participate in your next subgroup meeting and ask them then, or potentially just reach out individually to you to ask those questions. Does that seem okay? And I don't want to defer the conversation, but I just want to be cautious of time as well, and knowing that we have a few more things to get through tonight. But this is
I guess it's
got my mind turning into all the kinds of different things that we go through, and looking forward to further discussion.
We absolutely are open to lots of ideas, but I would like just a thumbs up or down. Are you, as a planning board, each of you, are you comfortable with us focusing on the attainable housing versus the affordable? And do you understand the difference? Now we've explained it. Yes? Okay, thumbs up there.
Thumbs up, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's important input for us, so that we can move on from here.
Yeah, and Mary, the only thing I would add is that I think we are, as long as we're not at risk of dropping below that 10% threshold for the affordable housing.
We're good right now.
Yes.
Good, exactly.
So I think that'd be my only caution, is that we don't want to go add so much attainable housing that all of a sudden puts us at risk to more 40Bs. Just as a board, I think we try to avoid those 40Bs as much as we can. So.
Yep, absolutely.
So if I could jump in
Sure,
on the
Don.
40B aspect. 40Bs don't have to be scary. They can be friendly 40Bs. They are beneficial to the town because for one of the, how do I say it? One of the carrots of a 40B is that you only have to provide 25% of the units as actual affordable, but all of the units count on the SHI. So you do a 10 unit 40B and you do 3 units affordable, all 10 units are on the SHI as affordable, even though only 3 are actually affordable. So I just want to caution you that 40Bs are not evil. When they are unfriendly 40Bs or hostile 40Bs, they can be. But since we are above 10%, not that this board really has anything to do with it because they go through the ZBA, but 40Bs can be a valuable and powerful tool that can help create affordable housing in town.
All right. Thanks, John. Dave, do you want to pull up our slide presentation on the pedestrian connectivity topic?
I don't have that ready. I have some notes.
I'm just joking.
I have the notes for our goals.
That was a good one, Gary. You scared.
And
not to mention I'm on a tablet.
Yeah. So maybe since our last remaining committee is short-staffed a little bit, we can probably speak to the most recent progress on the pedestrian connectivity plan. And to Dave's point, we took a little bit of time just to sort of remind ourselves as to what we were trying to do. I don't have slides here, so you'll have to listen to me, and I'm going to try and keep this pretty brief. But our overall goal was to create a plan to improve non-vehicular connectivity. So bicycles, cars, bicycles, pedestrians, runners, whatnot, within the town of Hopkinton with prioritization of areas of focus. And the connectivity plan shall, number 1, improve safety for pedestrians using sidewalks and trails. 2, encourage and support healthy lifestyle. 3, connect neighborhoods. And 4, reduce dependency on motor vehicles. And so the challenge, of course, is that there's a lot of different ways that we could address this. Candidly, on who's been on our calls, there's been a lot of conversation around, should we be sidewalk focused? Should we be trails focused? What kinds of trails should we be focused on? And I think that there's still a little bit of work for us to do to understand how people envision connectivity beyond cars. And I think that so our next step was really to update a pedestrian connectivity survey that we had started a little while back. For background, we did a sidewalk survey back in the beginning of 2020. One of the challenges of that is that it's specifically focused on sidewalks, and I think also that it's specifically focused on trying to identify which streets should have sidewalks. And the flaw in that approach is that it's really very heavily influenced by the number of respondents, because people always want sidewalks near their house. And so the idea here was that we could put together a survey that kind of, instead of trying to just identify streets with sidewalks, can help us identify the areas or general themes that we should focus on. So, you know, I'm not going to go through details of that. We've been through it as a subgroup. We had some other folks from other committees weigh in on it. But just to give you a little flavor for it, basically we ask which of the following uses would you consider using a sidewalk or trail? And those categories being fitness in some capacity, walking or bicycling to school, going to stores or restaurants or businesses or town offices, getting to other neighborhoods or other neighborhoods. And the idea was that if we understand how people intend to use it, then that's going to help us figure out where in town we should focus and how we can start to build out this connectivity plan. So just as one last example, let's just say that the predominant need we hear is getting to and from school. Well, if that's the case, then we know that the areas of focus for us should be in providing better connectivity specifically around schools. If it was more around fitness and recreation, then we might be looking for longer loops and trails and kind of a different application. And so our hope is that this survey will give us some really useful information to help us as a subgroup prioritize how the citizens of Hopkinton want to traverse and what their intended use is, and you know, we can start to build that connectivity plan from there. And then once we've got that, then you know, we've got some analysis to do on that. We'd like to do a public input meeting on that analysis with some of those recommendations of area of focus as a means of validating and sharing with the community the analysis that we did, and with the end goal of some type of sponsorship or advocacy for you know, potentially for a town meeting article in which we'd be trying to get some additional investment in some capacity. So there's a lot of it depends here because sidewalks are very different from trails. They require different levels of planning and infrastructure. There's a lot of time associated with this. But you know, I think that if we go back to the origins of some of this subgroup, it came down to the fact that every time a sidewalk proposal is introduced at town meeting, the last couple of times they've been submitted, it's never gone through. So how can we be a little bit smarter, make sure that we're proposing things that people can embrace and making sure that we have data and evidence to support the proposal by which we're putting forth. So Dave, what did I miss there?
You actually nailed it all, Gary. You went all over our goals, and you know, a couple ones that I hold dearly are improving safety and connecting neighborhoods. You know, because in my area of town, close to the Westboro line on 135 and Wood Street and Spring Street and Fruit Street, I pass people by all the time thinking, you know, how unsafe that is, them walking in the street, especially people not even facing traffic, right? So they just trust the driver, and people texting these days, and I just think that's ripe for unfortunate incidents. So I'm really into the improved safety thing. You know, you listed all our steps about, you know, trying to get the survey out and you know, possibly creating town articles or recommending locations, you know, working with the DPW and you know, a public input section. And just for memorabilia or reminiscence sake, I have the results of the 2016 survey in front of me. Printed copy, nice. So, you know, a lot of that was Chestnut, and you know, like I said, that when we did that one, it was just by streets. So I think they took the results of that and tried to chunk the groups of streets together to figure out certain areas. But you know, the bottom line is, yes, we need to come up with a plan, but also we need to start actioning on that afterwards and trying to work with the DPW. Like Gary said, it's both trails and sidewalks, but I kind of lean towards the sidewalk side of it because we do have the trails committee, and you know, the sidewalks are kind of falling into a gray area of you know, nobody taking an initiative on it. So because it's hard, right? Everybody wants sidewalks in their area. So
Yeah. So the only thing I'd add there, Dave, is that the purpose of the survey is to understand what people are looking for. And the challenge with sidewalks is that they generally cost a lot more than trails do.
Yep, definitely.
So, there are trade-offs here. And I think, again, that's why it's so important that we understand what the public is looking for and that we expand it and really understand the drivers of what they're looking to do, more so than just sort of specific streets to figure out where to put sidewalks or specific parcels of land to put trails on.
Yep.
Jane, I know you weren't able to be a part of our last discussion, but you are an important part of this subgroup. Any other thoughts from your end on it?
Quickly, I think one of the things we've spent some time talking about, and I do apologize for missing the last subgroup meeting, was taking existing sidewalks and or trails that we already have in parts of town and how to connect them, because there are a lot of missing links. Say, for instance, between as the sidewalk ends by South Street, and how do we get to the west part of town, and how can we make that happen? Can we apply for grants to build under 495 bridge to gain over to the west side? How do we get from, if we're able to get that, how do we get from West Main Street, either through the backwoods or using existing sidewalks to get over to Wood Street? And how, once we get to Wood Street, how do we connect to Fruit Street? So there's another larger layer that I think our committee is also going to continue to look at.
Yeah, and I do think that's worth noting, and I think people all know this, but I'm just going to state the obvious. We're not going to have sidewalks or trails on most of our streets, and so I just throw that out there because we've got to be very targeted and prioritize those areas of which we and collectively with the community see the most need. But when you just look at cost of implementing some of these things, it takes they're expensive. They need to be maintained, and so I just sort of want to caution everybody that that we are going to have to prioritize certain areas over others, at least to Dave's point, to get things rolling again.
Sounds good.
Fran's got a question.
Yeah, one comment on that. As you gather the input, and I think Dave's been around long enough as well to kind of see this. It's more than just kind of where do people want sidewalks, but it's really trying to understand, why do people feel there's a need for the sidewalk where that person wants it, right? Just the fact that hey, there's a lot of kids that walk here, joggers that are here, walkers that are here. That's great, but I think you really, to your point, once you kind of layer in the cost factor, you need to be able to kind of validate or you need to really affirm how you prioritize where you're going to put these. And I think the more broader input, not just the choose your top three, but as to understanding why they think that there's a need in those areas is going to be helpful. And I think the other thing is, and I don't know how you answer this one, is getting the public, either making them aware or getting them involved or engaged is always the tricky conundrum, right? Because I remember at one point, town meeting a couple of years ago, we had made some proposals, and then at that time we got hit out of left field from all these objections. And I think it was the going under 495 to connect to the west side. And was crossing the off ramp off 495. People are always looking first to their right or left. They're not looking to the right of the walkers. It's going to create a risk. So again, I'm stuff that I'm sure you guys are already kind of taking into consideration, but I do think the deeper input from the public would be beneficial as well.
Yeah. All right. So stay tuned. I will. John and I need to circle back on how we're going to distribute this survey, but we'll naturally use our various news outlets and other forums and groups to do so. And I'd encourage all of you when it becomes available to send the link out as well. Stay tuned. That's our next step, and I think that'll give us some good input to go start piecing together a stronger story for this. Fran.
Yes.
/ John. Any update on the?
Yes. You got a brief update,
space?
John?
Yep.
John, please feel free to jump in and fill in some of the blanks. So John and I met. We're actually down a member, and last meeting, Rob unfortunately was not able to attend, but we looked at the kind of current open space recreation plan that's in place, and John and I kind of looked at the different chapters that need additional work, and we're at the point now where to kind of identify where we need to be able to reach out to various subcommittees, reaching out to the public to gather their input to make some updates on the chapters, some of the key chapters in the documentation. It's going to take a little bit of time, as we've got to do some, I think, kind of digging, understanding, which groups and kind of the scope of public input that we want to identify, and be able to set up those meetings over the next, I think, we're probably looking at the next 4 to 10 weeks to be able to do that, given the fact that the holidays are in there as well, and identify key stakeholder groups. So that's where we're going to meet again, but that was kind of a high level gist of the meeting that we had last subcommittee. So John, am I missing anything in that construct?
No, I met with Ed Harrow, who's the chair of the Open Space Preservation Committee, and he seemed on board with the idea. So,
yeah. And,
so, Fran, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So I haven't read that open space document. Is it more geared towards what to do with our existing open space and how to manage it, or is it also actively looking for tips to look for ways to acquire new open space?
I think it's probably a little more of the former, right? There are some elements in there data talk about what we can do to acquire additional open space, but I think a lot of it's just kind of looking at how we effectively managing what we have today, and how do we kind of, for lack of a better term, optimize that space and the uses for that space as well. But it's not just limited to that. So I think there is an aspect where we could identify new parcels in open space, and some of the work with the growth study committee looked at those. Then it becomes a broader question in terms of, okay, well, how do we actually get them, right? So it's do people donate? Do we look to lead a town to acquire some of that land? There's various levers that can be pulled, because the growth study committee did identify a number of parcels in private property right now, or private ownership, but they would be choice parcels if we could get them. That would really kind of expand our footprint in open space, grow more than the square mile that we have currently today. And because I do think it is a natural resource that is unique to Hopkinton, and it really is something that we could lay claim to going forward. The more open space we have, I think the more beneficial it is to existing people in the town, but also makes it very attractive for other people to look to see Hopkinton as a place that they would want to move into. So the other member of our team, and I don't want to, give him some time here, Rob, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts or suggestions to kind of share.
I think we just need to. Yeah, I don't have much. I think it's the open space and recreation plan, so I think it's encompasses that part as well. And I think we just have some work to do. And I'm sorry for missing the last meeting, but I think there's just some more work to do.
Okay, so good progress. I think I like the approach of when we have a little lighter agenda is to carving out some time at the end of it, because I know we all are busy outside of outside of our planning board responsibilities. So, but I do want to keep pushing on this because, you know, I think this is in reality the stuff that we can do that has a longer term impact on our community. So, and then Fran and Rob, for your group, we should have a new committee member very realistically next week.
Looking forward to it here.
All right, so last meeting, last agenda item, minutes from August 23rd, 2021. Stephanie, thank you again for your work on those. Any comments or modifications? And seeing none, I will entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the August 23rd, 2021 meeting.
Mary Larson Marlowe, so moved.
Sundar seconded.
All right, assuming no further discussion, we'll go ahead and take a vote. So we'll start with Mary.
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Dave?
Hey, Paul, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Shahadul? Oh, sorry, Hadul's not here. Fran?
Fran Young, yes.
And Gary Trendle is a yes. So last thing before we adjourn, just a reminder, we've got a joint meeting tomorrow night, 6:45 with the select board. We've got 2 applicants. There's some information in the meeting packet. So on that note, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Sundar, so moved.
Mary
Rob
Larson,
Benson, second.
Sundar with the motion, Rob with the second. Fran, discussion?
Question. John, do we need does anything need to be signed?
2 A&Rs need to be signed.
That's what I thought.
And then Gary, you've got to sign the restricted land covenants.
Yes. What's the timing on those restricted land covenants?
I don't think there is timing.
Okay. All right. So we've got a motion and a second to adjourn. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Dave?
Hey, Paul. Yeah, I guess maybe, yeah.
Sundar?
Sundar, yes.
Fran?
Randy Young, yes.
And Gary Trendle is a yes as well. Just one more question, John. Is the select board meeting in person tomorrow?
It is hybrid, so you can go in person or you can Zoom in. If you are not going to go in person, can you give me a heads up so that I can make sure that IT is aware that you are not going to be in person? Mary will not be in person. Fran will not be in person. All right.
No, but no,
John,
question. In person is in the town hall, correct?
Correct.
What? How long does that meeting? Will that meeting last?
I mean, depends on how much discussion, but it really shouldn't be more than 15, 20 minutes.
And is that the first agenda? This one?
It is not. So the
Okay.
meeting starts at 6. You
Okay.
guys are on for 6:50, 6:45, 6:50.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Do we need to call in at 6:30 or is 6:45 sufficient?
If everyone could just, if you can't be there in person, send me an email so that I have a hard copy of who's not going to be there. And then I can email you directions when I get them from IT. If you don't email me, I'm not going to include you on the directions to call in. So please
So email. Raising your hand is not
Email.
sufficient.
Gotcha.
Send the email.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks, Gary.
Night. Thank